Alrighty. We've got a steady stream of people coming in today. Welcome everybody. This is our public Q&A for the GEMSAS deadline that's coming up, and we welcome any questions. We're going to be here for the next hour, and it's really more of a flexible session. We don't have any predefined content or things we want to cover. We noticed in about 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week ago now, we did the BMP program, and you might have been in that one. Kaiwen and myself presented that. And we saw that there were lots and lots of questions coming through. Some were about BMP, others were about GEMSAS preferencing because the deadline was coming up. So we thought it was a good idea maybe to throw on this Q&A panel. We've got here, my name's Tom Spaulding. I'm the manager of Fraser's Interview. And we've also got Tori here. And we've also maybe later going to have some more presenters join us. So we've got Sarah Butler, who's a doctor in Melbourne, who's going to come on in hopefully later on in the session. But we've got some stragglers coming in. How are you going today, Tori?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Awesome.
Basically, I'm just a third-year med student with Tom actually at ANU, just for background.
Yeah, so Tori and I are both on our medical placements at ANU. I'm specifically in my surgical placement at the moment. So I've just been going through vascular surgery, orthopedic surgery. I'm currently on urology, which is a very interesting specialty to get involved with and have a go with. But I will say it's been one of the most interesting parts of my whole medical journey so far, actually delving into clinical practice and sort of being able to be in the room with those difficult conversations and the really amazing things that doctors get to do on a daily basis. You don't really get that until you start your placements. Have you had a similar experience, Tori?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is finally starting to feel real now being placed in the hospital. Yeah, so it's something to look forward to for you guys.
And I would say ANU's got this privilege where we do a day in the hospital in the lead up to year 3 as well. So you sort of get slowly used to going to the hospital on a weekly basis, and you by osmosis get a feel of what the environment's like. And then you move into year 3 and it's like, well, it's just everything you've done times 5. And it's a little bit more in person, very much connecting a lot more with doctors, maybe doctors that didn't necessarily sign up for teaching. And so it's interesting to see the different ways that doctors work in hospitals. Some of them are really great at teaching. Some of them are more keen on doing their clinical practice and focusing on that. So it's a really, really interesting challenge, but also a unique environment to be that medical student that's just starting to assimilate and just starting to find their position. Yeah, as I mentioned, I do have a couple of questions that have been sent to me directly on the messages. So you can also do that if you want your message to remain private. We'll obscure names and things. We've got someone here who has asked publicly, hey guys, is this recorded and will it be freely available afterwards? Yes, it will be. So you can find it if you go onto our Fraser's Medical YouTube page. We've got the team uploading them on a weekly basis, and you might even be able to see some of the old sessions that we had in the last couple of weeks. So we had the BMP session last week. That was really valuable. We had lots of students who were very happy with that in the end. And so yeah, if that's for you, then we'd love to see you jump on that and have a review. Feel free to send us through these messages now. So I'll start off with the first question I've got. Hi, a question that I'd like to ask regarding GEMSAS about the referees for the Wollongong application. When the uni contacts them, what do they ask? And is this enough for them to confirm your involvement in the activity you state? Or should they be boosting you up? So I think they confirm your involvement, but they might also ask whether they think you are a good fit for the medical degree. So they will specifically say to you, they will specifically say to the referee, so do you know Tori, and do you think Tori would be a good doctor? And usually it's a very quick question. They probably wouldn't sit on the phone with them for a while, but I do know that they ask more than whether you've just been involved. It's always some rendition of whether they think you'd be a good fit for the medical degree. So that was the next question is also, if we do not put a contact, but supporting documentation is a certificate of participation is enough. Yeah. So I would recommend putting referees as contacts. They're almost like an additional field that you can really boost your name a little bit. Yes, the referees are good for supporting an activity that you've done, but if they happen to call a referee and that referee is really supporting you and saying, oh, this person's going to be a really great fit, then that's like having an extra point or two on your application. It's really good to have those. So I would recommend, if you do have a reference, definitely put that in. However, they're not going to discount you if you've just provided supporting documentation. So it's all on a scale. People have gotten in by just putting the supporting documentation there. Hey guys, is it, oh, that one's done. Obviously the competitive GAMSAT and GPA combination is quite high for ANU. Where would you say the cutoff is? I think this might be a question better served for Tori. Tori, what do you think? I mean, anecdotally, of course, we don't know like exactly what the cutoffs are, but do you have an estimate yourself?
I think usually on the Fraser's website, we do generate some data based on our own predictions. So I might actually see if I can find that and refer to that. But just from my own experience applying for it, I agree that it was quite competitive, but I definitely think, and I think this is a theme that we'll probably be hammering home throughout the session, is to apply and rank your preferences in order of where you would really want to go. That's what I did. And I don't know if now's a good time to sort of share my own story. Do you think, Tom?
Go for it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, this was in 2020. So to get in for 2021. So a little while ago now, but basically I just preferenced in order of where I would really like to go. So for me, that was Melbourne Uni, Notre Dame, Sydney, and then ANU was number 3. And so I didn't actually get an interview for my number 1 or my number 2, got an interview for my number 3, which was ANU. And yeah, I was really wrapped with that. Interviewed at ANU and then ended up getting in. So I would really recommend doing it that way. And of course, you can do a bit of strategy of where am I more likely to get into. I would have thought I would have been more likely with Notre Dame because the scores are typically lower, but obviously they didn't like my portfolio. So I still ended up getting ANU, even though the scores were a bit higher typically. So I think it's really important to just put where you actually want to go higher, because at the end of the day, you'll get your highest preference that you match with, if that makes sense. If that's unclear at all, please let me know. But in the meantime, I will try and see if we've got any estimated figures. But yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, so I know the calculator you're talking about. We have this tool on our website called the interview offer calculator. Now, in the last year, since up until now, it's been a little bit outdated in the last year. So I've actually got our data guy doing a full overhaul of it using all of the data points we've seen in the last 2 years. Naturally, we see a lot of students come through and a lot of students offer up, what their scores were in the end and how successful they were and what their GEMSAS strategy was. So we're able to now use those data points to put together these really strong tools. And so if you got an invite to this specific workshop and, if you're following our social media, you'll probably see that we'll make a post when we're updating that. I think that's due to come out in the next couple days or so. So yeah, would definitely recommend putting in your scores in there and having a go and seeing if, what the different percentage levels are. I had a play with the beta today and it's really quite good. So yeah, have a go with that tool later on in the week when it comes out. But if I was to answer on my side of things, I would suggest that maybe ANU is going to be competitive. It's not going to be like, Notre Dame Fremantle or something like that. Like you're going to need a pretty decent GAMSAT. Like I've known GAMSATs at ANU to be above the 70 mark. It's quite rare to, in conversations I've had to hear that someone's had below a 70. And, generally a lot of people have research backgrounds. I think we've got 3 PhDs just in our year alone. And so, there's a lot of people utilizing bonuses to get into ANU as well. So I hope that maybe answers your question. I'm sorry we can't give you exact numbers, but yeah, ANU is a competitive one. Next person has asked, does GPA calculation include semester one results? I believe they do. So semester one of this year, the GPA will include that in the calculation. It'll weight it 3 times. Whereas I'm not sure, it was a sort of vague question, but I guess the background is you wouldn't include semester one or semester two if you're in a 4-year degree, and you're talking about semester one and semester two of the first year. So because it's only the most recent 3 years. Someone else has asked, hey, Tom, just wondering if GAMSAT score of 57 and a GPA of 6.8 could get me an offer anywhere. I would say don't pull yourself out of the ring for that. I think definitely put a application in. Honestly, the GAMSAT is a little bit shy of where you'd probably want to be, but it's better to put your name in the ring. You never know, you might get a 3rd round offer. So someone else has asked, what was the specific entry? What if the specific entry was not for a specific organization and was actually a self-organized portfolio? Not sure if I understand that question. Maybe you could rewrite it in the chat for us. In the meantime, I've just seen that Sarah has just jumped in. I know Sarah's on her commute. She is a very busy doctor in Melbourne and has just finished a big day of work. So we're really glad to have her here today. And yeah, Sarah, did you want to introduce yourself briefly? I know that you're on your commute.
Hey everyone, yeah, as Tom said, my name's Sarah. I'm currently working a medical year at Alfred at the moment. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm just on the train, stopped at Flinders. Happy to answer any questions if people have anything, particularly for a little bit further down on the line, or how it all plays out post all the stress of GEMSAS and that, because I promise it does get easier. This is honestly the only hurdle you have until training pathways, which please don't start worrying just yet.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so for the contacts for Wollongong also, who do you put if you don't have an actual contact? Or if the contact is someone from a school, but they no longer work there anymore, would I just be putting the school reception number and email? I think you can put that down if that's a worst case scenario. But if your contact at that school had moved away, I think you could, if you were able to, put their Gmail down, even though the Gmail wouldn't have the school in the email or anything like that. The university understands that people move around and things like that. So they may reach out to that person directly. So if you, let's say, did a volunteering activity with a volunteer program, and that was a 1.5 years ago, and you learned a lot from it, and you think that's a really important thing to include in your portfolio. And since then, the organization, the person who was supervising you in that maybe left, or maybe you did that thing with that person and they're no longer with you, but you're still in touch with them, maybe put their personal details down. But yeah, worst case scenario, you can put the organization phone number and email down as well. Someone's asked, just to clarify, for supporting documentation, would they need to be submitted after we submit the application? Now, I believe that's part of the application. It's got the due date on it for those portfolios. So you probably need to submit that all with the grouped documents and everything like that. Can you put colleagues from work if you can't contact the manager? I believe you can. Obviously, you want to go as high as possible. And if you're putting down colleagues, if you've got 2 work or volunteer positions that are about equal, and one of them you can give the person who was managing the program, and one of them you can give your colleagues, you probably pick the one with the better references. That said, you can use colleagues, and if you want to as well. But I think, yeah, always sort of go for the highest person you can. Deakin offer a bonus for full-time work. What kind of evidence documentation do you need to have to provide to show that you meet the time requirements? And what do you think they would accept being a sole trader? If so, what kind of documentation would you provide this, as this is a little harder to have timesheets? I think, if you have an Australian bank number or a bank certificate, like a business certificate or something like that, if you're a sole trader, I think obviously if you're with a larger corporation or business, you'd give your timesheets, probably like your last 2 weeks or 2 months of timesheets. But probably check the Deakin terms and conditions for that one more specifically. I can't be 100% sure on that one.
Yeah, you might even want to reach out to Deakin. They usually have admissions staff for each of the medical schools, and you could probably just reach out to them and say, explain your situation and get more tailored advice from them. But yeah, maybe like tax return details or something like that, if would be my guess, or yeah, an ABN or something. But yeah, I would reach out to Deakin in that situation.
So someone here is doing a 2-year accelerated degree, and they're going to be applying through GEMSAS this year. And they want to know, when they're working out their GPA, how do they exactly distribute the units across the 2 years into the 3 years? So the way it works is you've obviously got to do it in chronological order, based on the units you did. So maybe you did more units in this degree because it was an accelerated degree, but you sort of got to place them in the most recent. I think it's 8 units a semester. So the most recent 16, then the next 16, and then the next 16. And I think you'd want to do that in as much chronological order as possible. But I'd say probably for that one, defer to GEMSAS as well. There's a lot of things that GEMSAS just has that are really weird. And so I would probably reach out to them directly, but they will calculate it for you in the transition once you submit your transcript as well. Anyway, so whether you ask them or not, you're going to get the same GPA in the end. If your GAMSAT wasn't too much higher than the past cutoffs, would you need a near perfect GPA? No, I don't think so. I think that's something that you would consider. Like, you know, GAMSAT can go up and down year on year. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you know, you might win and get through to the 3rd round offers and do an interview and sort of get yourself there when you need to. So I think those are all key factors to consider as well. Tori, are you comfortable sharing your scores? You don't have to.
Yeah, I think what I'll just say is that, like, I actually was, because I was a Fraser student as well at the time, and I remember looking at these resources like the tables and the calculators and everything, and my scores were actually right around the estimated cutoffs that they had for ANU. So I hope that helps you. I don't think it's really useful to put my exact scores because it was like 3 years ago now, and I don't want to give false hope or you know, make you stress when you don't need to or anything, but it was right around what the predicted stuff from Fraser's. And just to that previous question as well, that about having a near perfect GPA, I think my GPA was quite strong. I also had the honours bonus, which helped me. My GAMSAT, it was good, but it wasn't the best GAMSAT you've ever heard. So having that research honours bonus, I think, is what got me across the line. So I was lucky with that. So if anyone is struggling with the GAMSAT, that could be a good way to boost your application as well.
Thanks for that, Tori. Yeah, so definitely look into the bonuses for each university. I guess the other takeaway is just, you know, I think it's on discretion each year and it goes up and down. I think I'd be concerned about getting an offer and maybe missing out if you were in like the low 5s for GPA and like the 50s for GAMSAT. I think that's sort of where you start thinking, oh, look, it's going to be a bit tight. But above that, I think it's like everybody's game. You got to put your application in and just see. You never know. Like, we see year on year, like we'll get to the end of the year as a company broadly, because we deal with GAMSAT, UCAT interviews. We go, wow, that was a really quiet year for medical applications. And usually when we have that reflection, it also aligns in what the average scores were and things like that. So it does, like, it really does go up and down. As much as a lot of people believe it's just getting harder and harder and harder, it really doesn't. year on year, it's like going up and then it's down. I mean, I think 2021 was a particularly hard year, like it really went up, but then after that, it sort of came down in 2022. And so, yeah, I guess don't worry too much about the scores and where you're at, as long as you're like within a regional like sort of average range. But we'll have that tool up later in the week and you can use that to see what sort of percentage you had based on our data points from the last 2 years. So how do postgrad studies weigh on GEMSAS applications? So your most recent postgraduate study will be treated like any other's undergraduate study in your GPA calculation. So let's say you went and did an undergrad, and then at the end of that undergrad, you did an honors like postgrad study sort of thing. And then your honors degree would be considered the last year of study, and you'd go back chronologically backwards. So essentially, every bit of postgrad study you do adds to what you've done and becomes the more relevant thing that they use to ascertain your GPA. A lot of these postgrad studies also give you additional bonuses as well. So you might get an additional bonus for a PhD or an honors, or there are specific programs. I think Flinders has a graduate program where they will give bonuses to their own university applicants if they've submitted those. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. Tori, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I just think it depends on what postgrad study you've done. Like we've been alluding to, ANU, they do offer bonuses if you've done a master's by research. So not just any master's, but it has to be one that involved a lot of like lab work or research work, or the honours year. And then, yeah, just like Tom was saying, if it was just any master's or honours study, it will help you if your first or second year weren't that strong. It can help you improve your GPA. So if you are someone who doesn't have the best GPA, it can be a really good thing for that as well.
Thanks for that, Tori. Someone else has asked, how do you choose which GAMSAT score to choose? One GAMSAT score that they have is better for Melbourne. I'm assuming S3 is really high, whereas the other ones are better for the overall score. Look, depends on the difference between the two. If the overall score is a matter of 1 or 2 points, then you probably pick the one that is Melbourne. But beyond that, I would probably like always lean towards the overall score, because you got to remember that you're putting your chips in a game here where there may be multiple universities playing. And so while Melbourne is the pipe dream and that's the one that you want, you've got to sort of target all of them. And you would be taking away too much from the other universities by favouring Melbourne if your overall score was so different between those two GAMSAT scores. So it's a rule of thumb, unless the overall score is like 1 or 2 difference, then probably always pick the overall score. That's better. Hey guys, wanted an honest response of my GPA. It's 6+, but my GAMSAT individual score for section 1 does not pass the admission criteria. Is it worth applying for dental school? Or would my application be rejected automatically because of the competition? Thanks in advance. You've got a good GPA. I would apply if you pass the admission criteria for dental school. So even if you only just pass the admission criteria for dental school, with a GPA like that, it's worth trying. I think in the very long run, and this is something I talk to people a lot about, is you got to think about medicine as like a 50 or 60 year degree, right? Or a 50 or 60 year pathway. And, you got to also think about what are you losing by putting in that application. Yes, there's a good chance it'll get rejected. And yes, you probably lost like a couple $100 in the application fee. And I know that's a lot right now. But in the grand scheme of things, in a 60-year career, $100 to push that career further, it may not be as important. So I would say always apply if you're applicable and you're able to fit the admission criteria, because you never know and you can't make judgments on your own level of competitiveness. So yeah, I guess if you fit the admission criteria for dental school, apply. especially if you want to do dental school. If you want to do medicine and you don't see yourself doing dental school, then maybe wait a year.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that last part as well. I think I've realized that, you know, we're going to be doing these careers for such a long time that it's worth waiting another year and redoing the GAMSAT to get yourself above that 50 or whatever in one section, if that's really the career that you want, rather than sort of settling for dental if that's how you feel and you're just applying for the sake of it. I wouldn't do that because it's a waste of like your money and also your kind of energy and your effort. But if you are quite keen to do dentistry and you could see yourself really enjoying that career, then go for it. So I think it's really an individual decision, but I wouldn't do it just for the sake of it, because doing dentistry is also a massive commitment and, you know, a lifelong career as well. So if it's not something you're really passionate about, I would definitely think about that as well.
I often find that there are people that I meet that want to do either dental school or medical school. And then there are people that want to do only medical school or dental school. And you can really pick it in their like why med or why dent answers. The ones that want to do either med or dent usually are going into it because they want to help people, patient care, you know, patient decision making treatments. Whereas the people that go into medicine are more, you know, I want to be a community leader. I want to have the opportunity to research and delve into the multitude of different specialties in medicine. And so those people sort of angulate their why med answer a lot more towards some of the unique parts of medicine when you compare it to dentistry. So, I mean, it really depends on what sort of archetype you are, but yeah, we may have well over answered your question there. Hey, where do summer semester results sit in terms of the weighted GPA? So same thing I mentioned before with the accelerated program, you've got to work out the units in chronological order. So you got to do the first year's units, the second year's units, and the most recent year's units in order. And then you sort of sit them in the same sort of way and you do the same calculation 3 times for the third year, 2 times for the second year, 1 time for the first year. But we've just updated our GPA calculator. So you should be able to chuck those in there as you go and you just sort of do it in chronological order. And I'd always go from back to front. So like start with the most recent year and move back if you've got like weird results like that, because you don't know how many of the results in the first year actually get missed out. So yeah, if I start my honours year from this term 2 at UNSW, will it count in my GPA for the 2024 application when I complete it in April next year? No, I don't think it will. I think it will count when you apply next year. So like if you're talking about your entry into medicine 2024, I don't think it's going to work. So you can't, your GEMSAS preferencing that goes in like 5 days is not going to count that honours project. But maybe the application next year, I think will, because the timing will line up. If you finish it in April, you'll be submitting your application in June, July, obviously. So yeah. Yeah, we got another, we got this question back. So I meant for the Wollongong portfolio, for example, the leadership section asked for the name of the organization, but what if you displayed leadership with something you organized on your own? Title it as the thing that you organized on your own, and see if you can like find legitimacy in organization or something that aligns with that. So maybe as someone in our year who's been really taken initiative and they set up like a really cool Instagram page that goes through different research topics with respect to general medicine and general practice. And it's very like Canberra specific. And so that person's like developed that all on their own, yet it looks very formal, like they've named it something that's like very formal, and they eventually formed a partnership with the MedSoc at ANU. And so while that was an initiative completely run by that one person at ANU, they have expanded that into sort of a little bit more legitimacy while it was their own. And so you might title something like that, like started this initiative or did this thing, And your contact for that may not be yourself, but it would be like anybody that knew that you were doing it or you partnered with. So I hope that helps. You've got to do your best to just title it as appropriately and professionally as possible. Do you agree, Tori?
Yeah, definitely. I think if there was anyone who was also involved or just sort of witnessed what you were doing, that would be ideal. And then, if there was no one else who you could sort of call on to be a referee, then you might need to, like you said, just sort of provide some other type of reference. But I think it would be ideal to have a person be a referee.
I agree. Yeah. So the next question is for UQ. The GEMSAS application said that if you didn't put them in the top 3 preferences, they wouldn't consider you or something like that. Would putting them in a lower place be a waste then? I mean, I guess if that's what it exactly said, I'm not quite familiar with that rule though. It wouldn't make sense because I don't believe the universities know what number you preference them.
Where did it say that it had said that?
Apparently in the GEMSAS guide.
In the GEMSAS guide, I might just pull that up. It was about UQ, right?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'll have a quick look.
Yeah. So does Notre Dame have a portfolio this year? No, they don't. They've taken it out and they've substituted it in for Casper. So Casper had 3 sittings for the GEMSAS guide this year. So if you want to go to Wollongong or you want to go to Notre Dame, you need to sit Casper this year. And it's like a completely separate thing that you need to do outside of GEMSAS. And then that sort of aligns with your application. So the 3 sittings, the first 2 of them have already completed. The final sitting that you can do it in is, I think it's on the 8th of June. And so you have until the 8th of June if you want to apply to Notre Dame or Wollongong and you haven't done Casper, you need to do that by the 8th of June. It's about $100, I think, to sit that test. You just sit it online. So yeah, I hope that's answered. No portfolio for Notre Dame. Hi there. In regards to preferencing, are the schools able to see where we rank them in our preferencing? Are there any schools that won't consider you unless you put them first? I think Tori's having a look at that. But from what I've known and from my experience, no, they don't really do that.
Yeah, the way I've always understood it is that they don't know where you've preferenced them. And the way it works is that they just basically will get lists of candidates ranked, based on scores. And then they'll go through and see who they want. And it's all centrally done, which is why you only come out with one offer from GEMSAS. So it has to align with whether they want you, but then it goes down your list of, well, did you want them or did you want someone higher up on your list? And it just keeps working its way down. So that's why I was surprised to hear that about UQ, but I'm just looking into that now on the GEMSAS guide. So I'll get back to you.
It's a very big mathematical system and it doesn't seem very standardized. You've got to think about this whole system of getting into medical school as very standardized. Like even the interviews, which are, quite qualitative, they've found ways to, score them and have set criterias for those so that they're able to quantify people's applications. So it doesn't seem like something that this process would do if they if they like showed the schools you're preferencing and the schools were able to be like, no, we don't want them. And I don't think schools are that worried about people putting them lower on the list. Sarah, you've been working in this industry for ages. I'm sure there's a question that comes up every year. Did you want to weigh in on see whether this was something that you've seen at all before?
Sorry, just trying to get my...
sorry. You go.
Let me unmute. I'll start in a second.
Have we got you there, Sarah?
Sorry, literally just got in the door, so I was trying to multitask.
No,
and get
that's
my
all good.
headphones working. Broadly speaking, I think when you're applying to med school, so much stress is put on trying to get into your first preference. And usually you've got a first preference for really good reasons, like it might be close to home, or you've heard really good things about it, or it seems to fit the vibe and the sort of extracurricular elements of that med school that suits you. And I think that's great. Like there's nothing wrong. And I think sometimes there's a lot of negativity about picking a favorite med school and having a top preference. Like certainly I don't think that's our message, is that it's so reasonable to have a med school that is best for you and is your first preference. But I think the second message is, beyond that med school, every med school will get you a degree, and every med school will get you through, and every med school will support you. Like once you're in, you will come out the other side. Like people don't fail med school. Like you can fail a year, it happens. But at the end of the day, like you will absolutely get through it. Everyone does. You come out the other end and you have a degree. And once you've got that degree, you can take that wherever you want. If you want to work in that state, easy. If you want to jump across to another state, easy, with some exceptions. But following that year, you can go wherever you want, whenever you want, do any job. Nothing based on that med school will influence you long term. And really the things that will influence you long term is the things you then go on to take on when you're working as a doctor. Not even don't already start thinking about research projects and things that you do in med school. Like at a bigger picture, med school's med school. It's only there to enjoy. And certainly no decision you make now will have any lasting impact on your career as a doctor, as a surgeon, as a med specialist, no matter what it is that you're wanting to do.
Yeah, I'm sure you can attest to this, Sarah. Like I've started like doing lots of placements, and doctors do not care what school you went to. Like it's just not something that's even discussed. And so, yeah, and doctors in the country move around so much. It's not even like you're geographically isolated to where you graduated either. Like it's such a flexible thing. You just got to get in somewhere. I will add to this that we've actually seen a big discourse of people in our support email asking about different medical schools and like prestige and things like that. And I wanted to sort of voice our stance on it as a company, is that we don't think that prestige is a big part of medical schools, and it shouldn't be a consideration in your decision making. Some people have mentioned that they're worried about research opportunities, but I can guarantee you that every school, if you say you want to do research, they're going to support you all the way with that. I don't know a medical school that's not going to want you to do research. And so, just to make it very clear, our stance is there is no prestige. Go to the school that fits you best. And like Sarah mentioned, like that's such a really good reason, is like I've got a support system in that town, or I've had a sibling go through that school and they're able to support me as I go through, or like my partner is in that town or something like that. So there are lots of reasons to want to go to specific medical schools, and we're not saying that you should not preference and have a dream school. We're just saying that prestige shouldn't be a factor in the decision making. Someone else has mentioned, has asked, do you know if they contact every single contact in the Wollongong portfolio? No, they don't. They contact some don't even get contacted, but they will just sort of randomly pick contacts and check on you. And obviously you want them to hear the right things if they do that. For the Wollongong portfolio, I'm a nurse and wondering whether I should use my nursing manager as a referee or to list a doctor. Do you think it would look better having a doctor there? I think both can speak to my character. I think even a nurse, I really do think that, because nurses are so valued by medical schools, and that's a superpower you've got. I reckon there'd be more people that are referencing doctors than nurses in their portfolio. So yeah, probably a bit controversial, but I'd put the nursing manager there, especially if they're able to attest to your character better. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think whoever is going to be a better referee, I would have put one just because they're a doctor, because I think like a nursing manager would also be really valued. I also just wanted to say, Tom, maybe I'll just really quickly share screen because I found that part of the GEMSAS guide that's relevant. Sure. just for that previous question. Yeah, so now I know what the student was talking about, and this is definitely new. I haven't seen this in any of the previous GEMSAS guides that I've looked at. So it is specific for the regional Queensland pathway. So I think if in this case, just like what we've been talking about, if the student is really passionate about being at UQ and being in the regional Queensland pathway, then you definitely want to be including UQ in your top 3. But if you're not really interested in this rural pathway, I wouldn't even be factoring that in because it's not relevant. And then you might end up on this pathway and thinking, do I even want to do this? So I think it just goes back to our core message of preference to what you actually want to do. Because I've actually personally known people who have gotten offers at schools and then rejected them because they've realized they don't actually want to go to that state or something. And that's just, you don't want to do that. You want a preference strategically, but also according to what you actually want to do. So if that really appeals to you, then definitely factor that into your preferences and include it in your top 3. But if you're not interested in that rural pathway and read up and investigate what that involves, then yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Tori. Let me just reshare our sort of banner here. So the next thing is someone has asked, hi Tom, I'm applying next year. Just wanted to get more information earlier. Where do I find the supporting documents required? Is there something like a list? So I think the GEMSAS guide is a really great thing. However, that gets updated every year. So while the guide this year will be a good place to start, it will be something that will be updated next year. We also have a bunch of free articles on our website that you can have a read through with different advice and tips and like how to get started on the whole pathway. And also later in the year, I think we're going to have them through July and August. We're going to have Head Start workshops. And these essentially have a lot of resources built in, a lot of tips on where to find resources and things. So that might be a particularly good workshop for you. Moving on, because I know we've got lots of questions here. Does preferencing full fee or bonded over CSP improve your chances of admission? I believe it does because there's less spots for those. So there's like a set amount of spots for those, and there are less people that are preferencing and selecting those. And so mathematically, your chances are a little bit higher. I wouldn't say they're dramatically higher, but there is a slightly higher chance because you think about bonded specifically. In every single cohort in Australia, it's mandated that 33% of the cohort are on bonded positions. And through the application pathway, you need to sort of consent that you will, take up that bonded position and you're applying for the bonded position. So if people aren't consenting to that, and I think, if less than the amount that would normally be applying to CSP are not consenting to that, then there's actually going to be less people applying to that spot. And therefore, mathematically, you've got higher chances. Hi, could you share a link to the cutoff calculator, Ken? I joined the meeting late, sorry. Yeah, that's coming out later in the week, so you should get it in your emails. I'll tell the team to send everybody that went to this session an email with that cutoff calculator in like 2 days when it gets released. So yep. Hi, I'm currently in my 3rd year of a 4-year degree, MedSci. The last year can be used for honours or advanced studies, but it can also be stopped after the 3rd year, I think. Would this be a problem for an application? Not at all. The application takes in the 3 most recent years of study. The only thing I would consider is what are your current year 1 marks and how do they affect you? And what are your current year 3 marks? So if you think your year 3 marks are, all 7s and you're doing really well, and your year 1 marks are also very, very good, then maybe you might end here and start your application. You could also do your application and continue the degree and do the honours. And I think they will start to count that first year if you technically graduated from the first half and you've got the second half to graduate at the end of another year. And so these are all things like you could even apply this year. What else was I going to say? Yeah, just thinking about what your scores are. I mean, if you're like me, in my first year of my undergrad, I probably didn't focus as much as I wanted to. And so my scores weren't very high. And so when I was applying to medicine, I was seriously considering doing another year, because it would mean that I could completely remove those scores from my, medical application and replace them with, really good scores that I was adding to the other end. Okay. Have you heard or known of people who got in with an overall GAMSAT score of 55? Is it common? It's not common. However, it has happened. And if you're above the eligibility criteria, I would still apply. I would prefer a bonded place, but I'm worried for my application to Notre Dame, Sydney, where offers are made to CSP first and then bonded. Any advice would be great. As I mentioned, generally bonded has a slightly higher chance of getting in, and they specifically have to allocate 33% of the spots to BMP. So it's not like anybody that selects CSP is going to get priority over BMP. It's like there's a set number of spots for each.
Yeah, and I think I would ask that person if they wouldn't mind just popping in the chat why they would prefer BMP, because you can still get a CSP and still do as many years as you want, rural or remote, if you were to be offered a CSP first. But if that's what you're worried about, so you could still accept the CSP if that's what you got offered at the end of the day, and then just work rurally or remotely wherever you want as you wish. And so for that reason, I would still encourage you to tick CSP. So yeah, that'd be my advice on that.
That's very true. Yeah, the wording of that is like, I'd prefer a BMP. There are technically no advantages to a BMP other than a slightly higher chance of getting in. And the level of disadvantage is up to your purview. I mean, a lot of people don't think it's a disadvantage at all because they're going to go rural anyway. Some people find it a disadvantage because it somewhat locks you into certain areas. But that's an educated decision you need to make on your own and see whether you're interested in going rural. But yeah, 100% agree with Tori there. It's hard to prefer a BMP.
No, well, I think Bonnie's just popped in that they want to work rurally anyway, and I think that's great. Yeah. And so I think if you were to be offered the BMP, that would be perfect. It's exactly who the BMP is meant for. So definitely make sure you're ticking that box for all the schools. And then, but I would say to you, if you do get offered a CSP, still take it, because you're still free to work rurally and remotely afterwards.
So if you want to go rural, you have the exact same career experience, whether you do BMP or CSP. If you don't want to go rural, obviously your career experience is going to be different because the BMP will force you to go rural. And so, yeah, definitely just make that decision based on what you want to do. If you've got a CSP and a BMP, I'd probably always select the CSP offer. But when it comes down,
then again, I wouldn't say that a BMP is a bad thing either. And I would encourage everyone who's okay with the idea of it to do it, because there's a lot of flexibility in it. Like, I've just linked the current guide for you to have a good look at, because it does change from when we were looking at it, Tom. But I think at least when we were looking at it, you only need to do your rural or remote placement 6 months at a time. You can choose various areas of needs around Australia. So there's a lot of flexibility, and I believe you have, 18 years after you graduate to get it done. So it's sort of like you're super locked in. And I believe when Tom, I think it was 3 years was when we were.
Yeah. So I'm also on BMP at the moment. I'm actually BMP. I would say, yeah, so it's 3 years for me, and it's continued to be 3 years up until now as well. So anybody that goes through BMP at the moment will do that. But yeah, moving on. What's the admission criteria for dental school? Is it 50? I'm not sure. You probably have to check that. It's probably based on the individual dental school. Just in regards to the question which I had before about calculating the GPA when you are dividing up the units into the years they fall into, would you go with a combination that pushes your GPA or lowers your GPA? So I don't think you get to pick the combination. That's what I'm saying. The combination is based on chronological order. And so the most recent units that you did will go towards obviously the 3 times weighted position, and so on. But if you if you were saying you did so many units at the same time that the chronological thing doesn't work, then I'd probably always calculate on a lower basis, just to, give everything the benefit of the doubt, if that helps. Yeah. Or you can email GEMSAS about that as well. Is it worth applying to Notre Dame, Sydney with a 68 GAMSAT and a 6.5 GPA without nursing or healthcare experience? 100%. 100%. People get in with those scores all the time, and you don't need to have nursing or healthcare experience to do well in your interview, or portfolio even. I have a question about Notre Dame that doesn't really seem to have any answers online. In their online profile for medicine, they talk about teaching medicine in the context of the Catholic faith. I'm not religious, and this statement makes me a little concerned that it might be heavily religious or require certain commitments. Do you know anything about this? From my experience, and I've spoken to a lot of people that go to Notre Dame, that the whole religious aspect doesn't play into it at all, because they use the same medical guidelines as all the other medical schools. So it wouldn't be right for them to have a different way of teaching or different things to teach you, because they need to be accredited by the same body. And so from the people I've mentioned, it's barely even like noticed in the lectures or anything like that. It's not like an extra slide on each lecture or anything like that. It's really just an absent thing. I think it's just something that is just like on their website. But Tori and I have both done classes where, maybe it was like social foundations of medicine. Maybe it's something that's a little bit less aligned with the curriculum. And I think each medical school does that. But I don't think they ever force that stuff onto you, and it's certainly not assessed. So yeah. Cool. Sorry, one last question. In the required documentation section, it mentions that I don't need to submit my official transcript results, just my exchange semester results. Is that done automatically with my university, or is there something else I missed? So the exchange semester results, obviously GEMSAS can't access them because they're in a university outside their system, whereas the main results are accessed automatically, because I think you'll put your student number in at some point in that application. So the answer is the exchange ones are done manually and the other ones are done automatically. For the portfolio, if you're putting the same job but different roles, do you recommend using two different referees? One would be a manager and one would be a senior, or just use the person that is higher up? Depends on who can pertain to your character better, as long as they're senior to you. So if it was between a colleague and a senior, then you pick the senior. If it was the difference between one senior and a senior even higher than that, then you'd pick whichever one can ascertain to your character. Just realizing that we've got 5 minutes to 8. And so I really want to answer all your questions, and we're going to do that. I'm able to stick around after this, but I know we've got two guest presenters here who I'm not too sure about their availability for the rest of the night. So did either of you, you're welcome to stick around as long as you want to, but if you need to head off, did you have any advice that you wanted to give to the people in the room? There's about 35 people here.
I'm happy to stick around until the end. I'm not sure about Sarah.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, my life is a bit chaotic. I will have to jump off. But I think all the advice given so far is right on the money. That at the end of the day, it's do your applications, do everything you can, put your preferences in, and just give it a shot. Like at the end of the day, that's all you can do. There's no gaming the system. Broadly speaking, it's just apply, see how you go. And then when interviews become, a little bit closer, then get excited, prepare really carefully for your interviews. And if you go in prepared, there's no reason why you can't get in if you've got that interview offer. That's really sort of the golden ticket. If anyone has any questions that you think maybe I can help answer, happy to be contacted at any time. I'm sure Tom can share my email. Certainly going to be helpful in the space of Monash, or in the space of how different applications and different medical schools continue down the line into applying into jobs. I've applied for jobs both interstate and in my own state and can speak to that sort of process, but I think that's probably down the line for a few of you. But I know inevitably at Frasers, we have a lot of people who are already worried about things many steps down the line. So happy to answer those questions. But otherwise, all the best for your applications.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us tonight. Awesome. All right, well, I guess we'll continue with the questions. Tori, I reckon I'll set the time at about 8:30 when we cut the session. So we'll try and get through as many as possible in that time. I might try and go a little bit quicker. But that's just so that anybody that wanted to stick around, like, we can try and get to as many questions as possible and then set an end time. So yeah, let's do it. So maybe a little bit quicker. If my honours is split up into 2 years, I started at term 2 and I finish at term 1 next year in April. Will they count 2 years in the GPA? No, they won't, because they're considered one, the units of the course is considered 1 year. Is Casper a difficult exam? Seems like it's harder than a portfolio. Yeah, some would say it's harder, some would say it's easier. It's much quicker than a portfolio. If you're interested in preparing for that exam, I'd definitely look at their website specifically. They've got some really great resources themselves. But we've also, I know we've got a lot of students in the room. So for the students in the room, in your application atlas, we've had our team put together some great resources and mock exams for you. And so that's also available if you're a student. The UQ first 3 prefs is only for their rural school. Amazing. Tori got to that. Damn, Tori, you are so far ahead. Don't BMP admissions end up locking you into 5 or 10 years working rural or remote or something? No, it's 3 years. And you need to split up the 3 years so that I think you can do 6 months post graduation training. So like as an intern, but at least 2.5 years of it needs to be in like after your specialty training. The other thing is you may get discounts on the amount of years you need to give. So I think they might take a year off if you work somewhere really rurally, like Northern Territory. And another good thing, a good resource for you guys, if you're considering doing BMP, is go on to the Doctors Connect website. It's a government website that allows you to put in any address and see if it would qualify as under the BMP. And you can actually see how flexible the BMP program is with terms of what it qualifies as rural and not. And yeah, if you're more curious about that, we spent a whole hour talking about BMP last week. So you can check our YouTube page and look at the session we did last week as well. I'm hoping to get into Monash, but the offer for it comes out after the GEMSAS ones come out. Is there any penalty associated with turning down the GEMSAS one after I've accepted it? Also, if I accept GEMSAS offer at a uni lower down on my preference list, would there be any chance of getting one up higher on the preference list, or if I decline it? So once you accept one in your GEMSAS list, that's it. That's the end of the road for GEMSAS. GEMSAS will turn your application off for all the other universities. They will sometimes give you multiple offers at the same time, and so those multiple offers will count. But as soon as you accept an offer, then that's the end of the road. For things that are inside and outside GEMSAS, if you get an offer later on, you may get an offer outside of GEMSAS even after accepting your GEMSAS offer. And so if you get that, there's no penalty. I mean, that's why they have multiple round offers, because people accept and then decline an offer later on. That's the safest thing. I mean, I always recommend people wait until the deadline. If they're expecting more offers later on, wait until the very last minute to accept the initial offer, because, you know, it's a hassle and it's a really awkward email to send. But I mean, no, there's no penalties. I mean, there's no way a university could apply a penalty to you for declining after accepting.
Yeah, and just like Tom said, like if you do accept and then you also get one from Monash and you would prefer to take Monash, you can decline the GEMSAS one and just know that it will go to someone else as a second round or a third round. So you can feel okay about that.
Cool. Someone asked, I'm curious, I'm also doing the ANU Health Science Pre-Med pathway, currently 2nd year. Why are you BMP? That's really funny. I don't think I even mentioned in this workshop that I did the health science pathway. So someone's obviously listened to me in another one. I guess it's just part of it. It's the allocation of all medical offers, even through pathway programs. The BMP is just 1/3 of all offers. Yeah. So yeah. And BMP, I think with the health science pathway specifically, is implied that you will either just get that randomly or not. And it's not based on scoring or anything. It's just random allocation. Next one, do you guys have any tips for the interview? I got an EOD last year after the interview at UNDS, and I'm normally a very confident person, but really struggled with nerves at the time. Yeah, I mean, the name of our business is Fraser's Interview, of course. We've got heaps of feedback for that. We often see that some of the most confident people struggle with interviews. I have a friend specifically who is currently in their 1st year at ANU and loving it. He is the most confident guy you'd ever meet. Got really high scores, probably in like the 90s for GAMSAT, and got a straight 7 GPA. Very, very intelligent cookie, yet and very like confident. Yet he struggled with like articulating his words. He had very good reasons for wanting to do medicine. So I sat down with him and had a chat about like how he's articulating things and like, you know, just sort of treating the interviewer as if they're, you know, just trying to get to know you. You shouldn't go in there and feel like you're under a spotlight. You should go in there and feel like you're having a conversation with the person. So I guess as like a very brief bit of feedback, that's what I could suggest to you. But we'd really love to get you into a mock interview and see, you know, whether there are any other issues that popped out to us, because, you know, maybe you think it was nerves, and that very much could have been it, but maybe there's something that you're missing that you did in that interview that could be resolved if you sit down with a tutor or something.
Yeah, and I think also don't beat yourself up because they're so competitive. I've got friends who interviewed at UNDS and like they're amazing communicators, but it's just such a competitive thing. And the good thing is that you're keen to apply again and have another crack. So practice is really the most important thing in this space. And like Tom said, that I think getting feedback from yourself, from friends, and then from professionals in this space is the best way to go about it.
My undergrad degree is more than 10 years old. I'm currently doing the PhD. How will the GPA be calculated? I would like to go study in Notre Dame, Sydney. So I would go to the GEMSAS guide and look at the mature age student section, because I think you just about quantify for that. If you're doing a recent PhD, then I think that will definitely be prioritized in your GPA calculation as well. So that's
yeah,
into.
The way I understand it is that GPA, doing a PhD will give you a perfect GPA, but I'm not sure if the PhD has to be completed. So I think that's something to refer back to the GEMSAS guide and maybe reach out to GEMSAS. But I know that PhDs are looked at favorably in terms of GPA. So yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So if you were to get an offer from interstate uni and unfortunately end up not being able to accept it, will rejecting an offer impact your chances? No, it won't. Do you get one interview out of the GEMSAS universities? No, people commonly interview for multiple. However, the interviews are also transferable. So there are people currently studying at ANU who sat the Notre Dame interview and their interview scores were deferred to ANU, which was interesting. Do you agree with that, Tori?
Well, that's because, do you mean that they interviewed at Notre Dame, but then they got in at ANU? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like they interviewed at Notre Dame, not ANU, and then they got ANU, which was lower down on the preferences.
Yes. So I think you will only interview at one GEMSAS uni per year, but it may not be the uni that you get into. And you may have multiple interviews if you are in, like Tom was, in a pathway. So you might interview at ANU and then also get something through GEMSAS, or if you go through GEMSAS but then also go to Monash or GEMSAS and Flinders, or is it Flinders or Griffith? I always get them confused. You know, those ones that are separate, USyd. aren't running interviews, I don't believe, but there are those different ways that you can do multiple interviews. But if we're just talking about GEMSAS, you'll only interview for one. But like Tom was alluding to, it might not actually be the one that you get into. And I have multiple friends like that where they interviewed at one school. The school was like, oh, they did well, but not well enough. They passed the score on to another uni, and the uni was like, that's good enough for us. So you end up at another uni.
Awesome. I've sat GAMSAT 3 times now, and I'm struggling more and more with it. Do you guys have any tips? Tori, can I leave this one to you? I'm just going to head to the bathroom.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I was definitely in that boat. I did the GAMSAT 4 years in a row because I was really struggling with it as well, struggling to improve my scores. So I've definitely been there. It's hard to give any specific advice, but I think I would recommend going onto the Fraser's website and utilising any free resources there, or whether, I don't know whether you've undergone any programs or anything like that. But I think the best general advice I could give would be to really look at what questions you're doing well in and what you're good at and what you're not, and just putting all your energy into getting better at what you're not good at, because I think that's what helped me improve in the end. So being really deliberate about how you're studying and really investing your time into specific question types that you're bad at, and also moving faster helped me a lot as well. So that would be my advice. Okay, next question. Tom, where are we up to? Because your question list is different to mine. I just answered the GAMSAT.
Yeah, I've got a lot of direct messages here. Okay, so any tips on how to prepare for CASPER? Do the practice questions on Acuity. Someone definitely recommended that. I would also say, like, obviously review all the resources you can. I've mentioned before, if you're a student, we've got resources for you as well. Yeah, note taking. So there's actually some really cool stuff in that thread there. I would definitely read through that as well. Where can we access the CASPER mocks? They're under the Applications Atlas on your LMS, and they're open to all students at the moment. There's 3 of them, I think. For the UQ rural situation, do the applicants have to be from a rural area? I don't think they do. What do you think, Tori? Did you read that at all?
No, so Lauren has answered the question for us and said no, but those from a rural area have a higher tier priority. So I think we'll trust Lauren on that one, but I would recommend, there was a link in that GEMSAS guide to more information. So I would try and get it direct from that link.
Awesome. Is the UNDS CASPER score a hurdle or ranked? I think it's ranked. Or Notre Dame. Yeah, Lauren's in here. She's like doing the job for us.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, I think the hurdle specifically for Wollongong changes each year. They're going to do that. So, yeah, I guess that's the problem with that. Some people who are, because they put you into different percentiles and they select a different percentile to be the cutoff. Okay, silly question. How is the GPA calculated for 3rd year if I am semester 1 now of 3rd year and the applications are now? How would it include marks for semester 2 of 3rd year? So I think because GEMSAS takes in your applications and it's a multi-month long process, they will take your marks from the end of this semester now. But I don't think they include the marks from semester 2 of this year. However, the marks from semester 1 of this year are multiplied times 3. So I hope that helps, because you'll pretty much have an offer by the time you finish this year with your undergrad. So it's impossible for them to include your semester 2 results, but definitely your semester 1 results, which you might get back in 2 months, will be included. Do you have information on what are competitive CASPER test results? Yeah, okay. So like yeah, you've got your four quartiles. Someone's mentioned that you'd want to be obviously in the top quartile. Yes, I think people have gotten in being in like the top 3 quartiles. So the lowest quartile is probably you're out of the run for that, just because it's so competitive. But I don't think you need to be in the top quartile to even like get your name in the door. And especially remember, this is one thing that people often confuse with GPA, GAMSAT, portfolios. The way these universities select people and how it works mathematically is that you have all of these people, and while you're all very diverse in the numbers on your application and the actual applications, the way that the universities select people in that group, you'll actually end up being clumped with people that were very similar to you. And so naturally, then you go into your medical school interview and all of your scores are clumped together. And so the difference between you and the next guy is probably only, 5 points on GAMSAT, right? But your interview performance may be vastly different, and that's weighted just as equally. And so when the marks are so stacked like that, whether it comes to the GAMSAT, the GPA, CASPA, then it becomes all about the interview. So the ultimate conclusion there is once you get to the interview is the most important thing. I would even just forget about GAMSAT because you'd be so stacked at that stage that the interview makes all the difference. All right, so do you have information? So heaps of people are applying to that one. So I will leave that one for you guys. For the, okay, I think I've lost my way here. Melbourne University asks for preferences of CSP, BMP, and full fee paying places, and you have to number them 1 to 3. Would my chance be the same if I preferred BMP over CSP? So it's slightly higher, the BMP, for sure.
Yeah, I would probably, in your case, if you're keen on BMP, I would do BMP above CSP. And of course, just general advice to everyone before you go ahead and tick full fee, if that's something you're considering, really think about if you can actually do that, because it's actually really expensive. And I think in the case of Melbourne, at least you need to provide financial documents to show that you could do it. So definitely think that through as well.
There's a story of a guy about 2-3 years ago that went to Macquarie, right? And he selected the full fee paying plays. He was from a pretty okay family. They were okay financially. He was having his parents support him through it. And because they pay on like a semesterly basis, he'd just pay it semesterly basis. He got to like his 3rd year of medical school, so almost to the end, and they like ran out of cash and they couldn't pay for him. And so he'd put in all of this work, and then that was the end of it. There was no med degree because he wasn't able to finish that. And so it wasn't like he could go back a year later and repeat it. It was just he was off the program, and they'd lost all of that money up to that point. And so really consider if full fee paying place is for you. It is for some people, but I guess that's why it's not a common place in the GEMSAS preferencing guidelines. Yeah. How do we submit the academic transcript if we're studying at a non-arts institution?
Yeah, I've got this. I was just in the GEMSAS guide. So the way I understand it is that if you're in an arts uni, then you can do an electronic copy of the transcript. But if it's a non-arts uni, you need to go to your uni, and usually you have to pay like about $15 to get an actual official transcript, which is printed out on nice paper. And then you have to scan an original hard copy transcript. And then or an official secure electronic copy of the transcript, which is different to just like the one you get when you look at your WAM. And then that can be given to GEMSAS. So yeah, it's just a little bit different, but just refer to the GEMSAS guide, and if you're still not sure, you can email them.
Regarding USyd, they asked for an academic transcript. So do I need to buy the official transcript for this? I went to Monash, so it was an arts uni. So yeah, you probably need to buy it, like Tori mentioned there.
USyd have their whole own process for how they do the applications, if I remember correctly, you have to do this thing called like QAS or something. It's like a whole thing where they run differently to GEMSAS, and they do their own GPA calculation. So I would just look into the process of that. I think if it's an arts uni, I think it was able to be done online from my memory, but I think just follow the prompts for UCIT. It's quite confusing, to be honest, but I was able to navigate it. But it's quite separate to GEMSAS.
Nice. And we're actually out of questions there. We've smashed through them. I've got one more thing to just go through, which was just what to do now with your application more broadly. A lot of people submit, we find year on year, people submit at the end of mid next week, and then they sort of just forget about their application, and rightfully so. It's a very stressful process to prepare for GAMSAT year on year. Let's say you got a great GAMSAT result, a great GPA result, people submit it and then go, oh, I'll wait until September now, and like when the interview comes, I'll prepare for it. Just a reminder that you only have about a week between getting your interview offer and your actual interview. And so I personally do not think a week is a good enough time to prepare for a medical school interview. This is like a full discussion of your personality, your motivations, your approach to problem solving. It asks you every single aspect and about every single attribute of a doctor. And so that is not something to prepare for in a week. A lot of these questions as well, they'll ask you, they might ask you about anecdotes and experiences you've had. They might ask you why you want to study medicine. They're very likely to ask you that. And so these are questions you must think about months in advance. Like the best answers I've heard to why medicine are the ones that are really old, that people have been thinking about for a long time. Because you don't want to be the guy that has to start thinking about, I know I keep saying guy, I mean guy and girls, that has to start thinking about why they want to study medicine the week of their interview. I think that's just horrible to go through, and you want to sort of take as much stress off yourself as possible. So start with those big questions now, develop some planning and some strategy around your interview, and start that preparation early. Whether you do it with us or if you do it on your own, it's really important. Like build a study group, get down with people, talk to others, practice. Don't just practice with family. Family are often very supportive, but they don't tell you any of the bad things. So try and find some really good people that are going to be very honest with you about your responses. So yeah, that was my little discussion on interviews. If you've got any questions about interviews, I'm happy to answer them. But yeah, interviews is one of the most serious things in this application. You don't want to miss it. Do we get free mock interviews for specific universities through Frasers if we're a student? Well, they're not free. They're part of our courses, but they are part of the simulation and comprehensive courses. So you can get 3 with the comprehensive and 1 with the simulation. The mock interviews themselves are university specific. And so I think around August, late August, we open our booking, and you can say, okay, on this Saturday of this weekend, I'm going to do my UCID mock interview, or I'm going to do my ANU mock interview, and we exactly match the format that you're going to get or that we're anticipating you getting later that week. And so, yes, there are mock interviews with Frasers Interview. I wouldn't say they're free, but they're very valuable. And you have tutors like me and Tori who have done the university interviews before and is able to give you good feedback. We've got 300 medical students that work for us, so they get very busy during September. Do we have a mock interview for UWA dentistry? Yes, we do, 100%. And this year we'll also be doing in-person mock interview programs again. So this was something we did pre-COVID, but it's essentially we'll have a mock interview day where we actually have a venue you can show up to and use one of the mock interviews in your package in an in-person capacity. So it's not just something that's done online, but if you want to do a mock interview in person, that's going to be available to you this year if you're in one of our student courses as well. Do you have any tips for interviews, Tori?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think in terms of in the actual interview itself, just try and be really authentic and I think that can come across through practice, because you have practiced enough that your nerves aren't inhibiting you, and that allows you to be a little bit more natural and kind of laugh more and just sort of like give normal body language and stuff and not appear as stiff. So I think that would be my biggest advice, as well as to just with your answers, of course, you're going to sort of rehearse them to an extent and have a rough idea about some points you want to cover for each question type. And that's kind of stuff that we teach. But also making sure it's not too rigid, and that you're flexible and adaptable in your answers, and that they still have, you know, your personality in them, and they're not over rehearsed as well. So I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, like Tom said, important to start thinking about it now, even though it feels wrong because you're like, I don't even know if I have an interview. But for me, I only had 10 days in between knowing I had an interview and actually doing the interview. So you had to have been practicing before, as wrong as that felt. So yeah, that's my
10
advice.
days, like, will go so quick, especially around that period. A lot of people doing exams. And so within that 10 days, you're also doing exams, assignments, your undergrad commitments, in addition to preparing for the biggest interview to date that you'll have to do. So yeah, if there's one thing you take away from this session, aside from all the feedback we've given, start early, start next week. Someone's asked, do you have any tips for if we feel that our answer to why we want to be in medicine isn't impressive as other people's? I literally grew up in a really medical family without getting into it. That's a major reason why I've grown up wanting to be here too, but I don't want the interviewers to think I'm idolizing or I'm trying to be my parents, because that's totally not it. Haha. Yeah, cool. No, we have lots of people who say that. There are two ways to answer that question. There's one way where it can come across as like, oh yeah, like I'm in the medical fraternity already, like my parents are doctors, therefore I'm supposed to be a doctor, like they're expecting me to be a doctor. That's how people have answered in the past. There is a way, and it's really complex. You've got to spin it to be a little bit more about, like, you know, I was exposed to this at an early age. You need to spend 70 or 80% of your answer dissecting the things you heard and got to experience. So instead of saying my parent was a doctor and I grew up around medicine and therefore I think I'd be a great doctor, you might say, I specifically remember my dad coming home and telling us over the dinner table one night about some of the difficult lives some of his patient families had. He would occasionally spend a Friday working with some of the underprivileged people in the community. And I remember idolizing him for that and respecting him a lot for that. And so if I can continue that legacy, if I can continue to be able to do those things for the community, then that's why I think I'd be a good fit for medicine. So there's two, like, you can see that one sort of like very surface level, my parents were a doctor, therefore I should be a doctor. The other one just uses the parents being a doctor as a bit of a kickstand for a greater message and a greater idea within that answer. Hope that answered your question, Emily. And also don't compare yourself to others as well. Cool. Any other questions? We're just about ready to wrap up. Cool. Tori, you have done amazing tonight. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, and good luck everyone with your applications. I really hope you all get the results you were looking for.
Yeah, thanks guys. Oh, and I'll chuck my email in the chat. Just let me do that. Sorry guys. If you want to email Sarah, I don't have it on hand, but just email me and I'll forward it and just say, hey, Tom, this is for Sarah. And I can forward it through to her. Or Tori as well. That's my email. But thanks, guys. Have a good one. Thanks, Tori. Catch you later.